Hello, my name is Navya and I'm going to teach you a little bit about transport in animals. So here's what we're going to cover. Transport in animals, blood and blood vessels, the heart, and the lymph and tissue fluid. So what is transport in animals? It is nothing but the circulatory system. The blood is pumped by the heart and travels around the body in blood vessels, namely the arteries, veins, and capillaries. One way to remember the distinction between arteries and veins, which I find convenient, is that arteries always carry blood away from the heart and veins always carry blood to the heart. When blood enters an organ, the arteries divide into smaller branches called arterioles, which supply the capillaries. And in the capillaries, the blood moves much more slowly, which allows for the exchange of oxygen and glucose, carbon dioxide, and other wastes. So in fish, single circulation occurs. In other words, blood passes through the heart a single time in every circulation. The blood travels from the heart, which has one atrium and one ventricle, to the gills, where it is oxygenated. It then flows to all parts of the body and returns to the heart. However, the blood loses its pressure when it passes through the capillaries in the gills, and it still needs to circulate through the organs of the body before returning to the heart to increase its blood pressure again. So that's why the system is inefficient, because the blood pressure lowers before it reaches all the parts of the body. In mammals, there is double circulation, which, again, like the name suggests, means that blood passes twice through the heart in one circulation. It passes once on its way to the lungs and again on its way to the rest of the body. When it passes through the lungs, it is known as pulmonary circulation. And when it circulates around the body, it is known as systemic circulation. Then comes the heart. The heart pumps blood through the circulatory system to all the major organs of the body. It has four chambers, the left and right atrium and the left and right ventricle. The ventricles have thicker walls than the atria, and this is because the ventricle receives blood from the atrium and pumps it through the semilunar valve. And the left ventricle has the thickest wall because it has to pump blood throughout the body and receives blood at a higher pressure than the right ventricle. The septum, like you can see in the diagram, separates the left and right sides of the heart. The valves are there to prevent backflow of blood. Between the right atrium and the right ventricle is the tricuspid valve, and between the left atrium and ventricle, there is the bicuspid valve. Collectively, they're both known as atrioventricular valve. Sorry about that. The valves in the pulmonary artery and the aorta are known as semilunar valves. They prevent backflow of blood into the right or left ventricle, respectively. So this is how blood travels from the heart through the body. So first it goes through the vena cava and then goes into the right atrium. From here it goes through the atrioventricular valve into the right ventricle. Then through the semilunar valve, it passes to the pulmonary artery and goes to the lungs, gets oxygenated and comes back through the pulmonary vein and goes into the left atrium. Then it travels to the left ventricle, from where it goes to the aorta again through the semilunar valve and then goes to the rest of the body. So the pulmonary artery and vein, they still have the same direction of blood flow, just that the pulmonary artery, unlike the others, carries deoxygenated blood and the pulmonary vein carries oxygenated blood. That's the only difference. So then there comes coronary heart disease. So in the lining of the large and medium arteries, deposits of atheroma, which is a fatty substance, keep getting collected in patches. When these deposits form, the area from which the blood can travel in the coronary artery reduces. This makes it hard for the blood to pass through. The surface of a patch of atheroma sometimes becomes rough and causes a thrombus or a blood clot to form. In the early stages, the atheroma may reduce the blood flow, leading to angina, which is pain in the chest caused by exercise or exertion, like when you're climbing the stairs or doing some kind of physical activity. If this persists, the blood clot can eventually block the coronary artery, which supplies the muscles of the ventricles with blood. This will lead to a severe heart attack called coronary thrombosis. The possible causes for coronary heart disease are diet. So the atheroma deposits contain cholesterol, and blood cholesterol can be influenced by the amount and type of fat in your diet. Stress. Emotional stress often leads to high blood pressure, which can increase the rate at which atheroma are formed in the arteries. Smoking. So carbon monoxide and other chemicals in the cigarette may damage the lining of the arteries, which allows atheroma to form. And genetic predispositions, like it can be passed on from one generation to the other. And again, age and gender. So males tend to have less healthy lifestyles than women and are at a higher risk of coronary heart disease. The risk also increases with age, regardless of gender. It just increases generally as you grow older. And lack of exercise. So the heart muscle becomes less efficient at pumping blood when exercise is not done. And sluggish blood flow can also be a cause of atheroma formation. So how to treat this? Angioplasty is one way to treat coronary heart disease. It involves inserting a catheter into the blocked artery. A wire attached to a deflated balloon is then fed through the catheter and then inflated. So that frees the blockage up. And in some cases, depending on the severity, a stent is also applied. It is a wire mesh tube that can be expanded and left in place. So this acts like a scaffolding and keeps the blood vessel open for free, uninterrupted flow of blood. The other way to do it is a bypass surgery, which is used a little less because it involves open heart surgery. So a bypass surgery is when a blood vessel from a different part of the body is attached around the blocked region, bypassing the blocked region of the artery. So hence the name, and allowing blood to pass freely. Then there are the blood vessels. So the arteries, veins, and capillaries, like I mentioned before. So the arteries carry blood at high pressure from the heart, and they mostly carry oxygenated blood, with the exception of the pulmonary artery, like we saw earlier, have thick muscular walls containing elastic fibers to withstand the high pressure of the blood, have a narrow lumen and high speed of blood flow. And that's obviously because they're oxygenated, right? So the veins carry blood at low pressure towards the heart, and they mostly carry deoxygenated blood, again, with the exception of the pulmonary vein, have thin walls, have a larger lumen, contain valves to prevent backflow because of the low pressure, and have a lower speed of blood flow. Capillaries carry blood at low pressure within tissues, carry both oxygenated and deoxygenated blood, have walls that are one cell thick for optimal diffusion, and a slow speed of flow. The capillaries are the main site for gas exchange with the organs, and the thin walls and slow speed of flow helps make that process more efficient. The arteries and veins divide as they move away from the heart, and the branches of these two blood vessels are called arterioles and venules, respectively. So shunt vessels. What are shunt vessels? Shunt vessels come in use when the cardiovascular system needs to redistribute the blood to specific areas of the body. This redirection is caused by vascular shunt vessels. They open or close to control the amount of blood flowing to a specific area. Like you can see in the diagrams, when it is cold, the shunt vessel dilates to reduce the amount of blood reaching the surface, and thereby reducing the amount of heat loss to the environment. So the blood just avoids the upper side and just goes through the shunt vessel. And when it is hot, the shunt vessel narrows to let more blood reach the surface to increase the heat loss by radiation. So that is how shunt vessels function. Blood. Our blood consists of red cells, white cells, and platelets floating in a liquid called plasma. Red blood cells are biconcave discs that do not have a nucleus but contain the protein hemoglobin. So hemoglobin combines with oxygen in places to form oxyhemoglobin, and this is a compound that breaks down and releases its oxygen in places where the oxygen concentration is low. White blood cells are larger than red cells and all have a big nucleus. There are different types of white blood cells, and they undergo a process of maturation and development in the thymus gland, lymph nodes, or the spleen. They're also involved in phagocytosis and antibody production. Platelets are special blood cells that help clot blood at wounds and stop the bleeding. Plasma is the liquid part of the blood. It is water with a large number of substances dissolved in it that are very crucial to the functioning of our body. So there are ions of sodium, potassium, calcium chloride, and hydrogen carbonate present in it. Proteins like fibrinogen, albumin, and globulin are also there. So fibrinogen is needed for blood clotting, and the globulin proteins include antibodies. And it will also contain food substances like amino acids, glucose, and lipids. The excretory product, which is urea, is also dissolved in the plasma along with the carbon dioxide. The liver and kidneys keep the composition of the plasma fairly constant, although the amount of digested food, salts, and water can vary the composition of the plasma, like the content, within narrow limits, not an extreme change. So when tissues are damaged and the blood vessels are cut, the platelets clump together and block the smaller capillaries to prevent blood loss. So that's basically blood clotting. The platelets and damaged cells at the wound also produce a substance that acts on fibrinogen and converts it to fibrin, an insoluble substance which forms a network of fibers across the wound. So these red blood cells become trapped in the network, like you can see, and form a blood clot. So this prevents blood loss and does not allow any harmful bacteria to enter the wound. So it basically blocks any kind of intervention. No entry exit is basically what this does. So what is the lymphatic system? The lymphatic system is formed by a series of tubes which flow from tissues back to the heart. It connects back with the blood system near the heart, where the lymph fluid is returned to the blood plasma. Cells exchange materials like water, oxygen, glucose, carbon dioxide, mineral ions, and all across their cell membranes with the tissue fluid surrounding them by diffusion, osmosis, or active transport. More fluid leaks out of the capillaries than is returned to them. And this excess of leaked fluid surrounding the capillaries then passes into the lymphatic system and becomes lymph fluid. So lymph nodes are small clusters of lymphatic tissue found throughout the lymphatic system. And lymphocytes are found in large number in the lymph nodes. They play an important role in protecting the body against infection. Thank you.